Welcome along to the November edition of Shropshire Business Live TV. We've left the studio this month and we're here at Pressfield School in Shrewsbury.
Today's show is going to be broadcast in front of a live studio audience that are waiting for us there in the theatre, and we've got a fantastic lineup for you on this month's show. Glyn Jones from the Bank of England will be here to give us a briefing. We've got a panel debate all about skills and recruitment, spotlight on the apprenticeship levy and lots more besides. So better crack on, haven't we?
Should we start the show?
Let's go.
Come on, Carl.
And here we are in the theatre at Pressfield School in Shrewsbury, coming to you live this afternoon in front of an audience. Say hello to us, folks. See, they really are there. Welcome to the November edition of Shropshire Business Live TV. Over the next an hour and a half, maybe a little bit more, we've got some fabulous topical debates, some fantastic studio guests, haven't we, Chris?
We really have, yeah.
And let's introduce you to the first one. We're delighted to be joined today by Glyn Jones from the Bank of England, returning to our show. Great to see you.
Yeah, it's nice to be asked back.
Have Bank of England agents and economists and people in your circle ever been so in demand and so popular as they are at the moment?
I have to say, and perhaps it's not a good indication, but at the moment, yeah, there's a high level of interest in the economy. We are doing numerous presentations to packed houses, and more importantly, there's a lot of engagement with the material we're presenting, because clearly economic issues and inflation especially is at the forefront of the minds of businesses and obviously households as well.
We're going to get into all that, and hopefully we've got some questions from the studio audience to come as well. But for people that don't know, just explain a bit about your role, how you fit into the bank and what you do.
Well, I work for the Bank of England's agency network. So what's the agency network? Well, basically we've got 12 regional offices in the 9 UK economic regions and the 3 devolved nations of Britain. And from that, we have a couple of agents who work, and basically we gather economic intelligence that helps inform banks' monetary policy deliberations and the decisions of the Monetary Policy Committee. How do we gather that intelligence? Well, that's largely by meeting up and down the country, basically, so from the Scilly Islands up to the Shetlands, across the UK. We meet businesses and basically discuss business conditions. So we will chat with them essentially about demand conditions, supply conditions, costs and prices, credit conditions, not just the things that they've been seeing over the past year, but also their expectations for the year ahead. And that's actually quite important in setting monetary policy, which is sort of forward-looking. So that's a sort of day-to-day job. And some of the audience who are awake, actually, none.
All right, so far.
May be wondering, well, why does the bank do that? And indeed, not just the Bank of England, but actually other central banks as well. So the Federal Reserve, the Central Bank in Australia have sort of similar functions. Why do we need to do that? Because actually we've got the Office for National Statistics. They collect a slew of statistics. What do the bank agents add to that? And the things that we can add, clearly, that, if you think about those statistics, a lot of them are backward looking. They're released with a lag. They don't tell you anything about the direction of the economy going forward. So there are gaps in that data, but also they don't tell you anything about sentiment. And importantly, given the sort of events that we've seen and will no doubt come on to recently, they don't tell you a lot about how businesses are reacting to specific impacts and how that is impacting their behaviour going forward. And that's the sort of thing that we can pick up through these direct discussions. And just one final thing. So in terms of the role, if you're interested in economics, there we go. It's a great job. Why is it a great job? Because when you think about it, we engage obviously in doing the quarterly, presenting the quarterly forecasts as and when they come out, largely but not exclusively to business audiences. But then we get the finer grained detail around what's happening in the economy from all the discussions that we have with sort of various businesses. But then also out to the regions, we get various members of the Monetary Policy Committee coming to visit. And obviously you spend time with those people, and that includes the Governor of the Bank of England, who was visiting us as recently as July, although that now actually seems a long time ago.
That's 3 prime ministers ago.
At least.
Like that, so, yeah.
At least.
So inflation, let's talk inflation. The autumn statement last week suggested, didn't it, when we had the OBR statistics, that it's maybe not going to peak quite as high as some people were fearing a few months ago, and next year it's going to tail on away a little bit. What's going on with inflation? Why, in a nutshell, why is it so high at the moment, and what's being done to try and bring it back?
Well, this is a really important point. So clearly, if it's okay, I just want to delve into this in a little bit of detail so that we get an understanding of why the bank is doing what it's doing and what are the expectations around inflation. Importantly, what's driving that? Why is it so high? The October figures that we saw released, inflation of 11.1%. Our target is to try and maintain inflation at a low and stable rate of around 2%. It's the highest it's been in 41 years. So unprecedented levels of inflation, partly because there's been some unprecedented developments within the economy. There are 3 that I'm going to highlight. Actually, no, there are 4 I'm going to highlight. I'll limit myself to that. But first, before I just do that, what I want to do is to try and contextualise to the audience here the sort of specific pressures that we were seeing in the UK. Because clearly there have been some global events that mean global inflation is high, not just here in the UK. So if you look at the euro area, inflation is also in double-digit territory. But what's driving that? The key driver there is energy. And that is because that economy imports quite a significant amount of gas, and particularly Russian gas. And we've seen that with exposure of the German economy, for example. Their domestically generated inflationary pressures are relatively modest because they've got more slack in the labour market. This is something I'm sure we're going to be coming back on to. If you look at then at the US, inflation is not quite as high as it is in the UK. It's around 8%, and actually, interestingly enough, is declining. They, indeed, I was told by a friend of mine from the US recently, because I was pointing out, well, you know, it's not so bad for the US because the US is fairly, you know, independent in terms of its self-sufficiency in terms of energy. He said, no, it's not. We're only 97%. You know, sort of self-sufficient. Whether that's actually correct, but certainly, you know, large energy-rich company. What's driving inflation in the US is very tight labour markets and domestically generated inflationary pressures. Okay, so coming on to the UK, what's happening in the UK? This is quite interesting because our inflation, when we look at what's driving that, is quite broad-based. So on the one hand, we've got the energy pressures, and that's a significant driver here in the UK as it is in Europe. But also, we're seeing that in terms of tradable goods, but also, actually, we also see strong domestically generated inflation, and that's the thing that central banks worry about, which is why the Fed and the Bank of England have been tightening rates. Now, sorry, apologies, I know it's a long answer, but I just wanted to delve into, if I could do, and if this gets boring, start looking at your watch or fiddling with your tie or something.
I'll tell you what, let me ask you a question in the middle of this, though, because I think it's relevant to it.
Yeah.
Because some people are saying, well, are we trying to use interest rates as a tool to bring inflation down when a large proportion of what's impacting on inflation is actually out of our control, though?
Exactly, and we hear that a lot from businesses who variously say, look, it's a demand shock, it's an external cost shock. And some of it is an external cost shock. But the problem here is where that becomes embedded in domestically generated inflation pressures and becomes self-sustaining. And in a nutshell, that is what's happening here in the UK, and we'll unpick that further. But if I just come to what is particularly driving inflation and how has it got to this double-digit level, and I just want to highlight very briefly 3 factors. The first of those, of course, is significantly the war in Ukraine, the tightness around gas supplies as a consequence of that, and the UK is particularly exposed to that. we are exposed to that because we are a net importer of energy, but also, unfortunately, in terms of our production and consumption, that is also highly dependent on gas. So that's the first factor that is significantly driving a peak in inflation. The second factor really stems from another unprecedented event, the pandemic. And out of that, you've got significant disruption in demand and supply terms. Because if you think about it, during that period, our ability to go out of the house was restricted, not just in the UK, but globally. So a lot of us sat at home, ordered goods online. So the demand for goods globally shot up, but at the same time, the supply of those was constrained because factories were also being hit, the factory output, by the pandemic, so we're having to close. You've got a lot of other disruption during the pandemic, including we saw shipping rates spike at enormously high levels. So some of that is then reflected in tradable goods, and that is imported into the UK. Why? Because we are also an importer of tradable goods. So that's the second factor. The third factor, I'll try and hurry it up because I know we haven't got all day. The third factor is this domestic factor. So those are the two external cost shocks which sort of set the ball rolling. But unfortunately, those have come at a time in the UK where we have historically very, very tight labour markets. So in effect, you have an external cost shock, two external costs coming in, hitting the UK economy at a time where actually the risk of that becoming embedded in domestically inflationary pressures is greater because our labour markets have never been this tight. And again, this is a sort of historic precedence. I mean, unemployment is now not been this low for nearly 50 years. And then the fourth factor, I'm just going to mention very briefly, we've seen sterling depreciation, particularly against the dollar, and that also is inflationary. Why? Because a lot of commodities are priced in dollars.
It's edged up a little bit, hasn't it, in recent weeks?
It has, but overall, I mean, clearly since the 2016 referendum, we've seen weakness in sterling and then a lot of volatility since then, but at a generally lower level. Clearly it has picked up from where we were going back post Kwasi Kwarteng's mini budget when it was almost at parity.
Are there any signs that we're seeing a peak, or could it get higher?
The expectation of the bank and the OBR were both sort of agreed about that in terms of the forecast, although there's huge uncertainty around that, is that we should be seeing the peak at the moment. Right. And actually during the course of next year, I mean, unfortunately it's going to remain high over the winter, but during from the middle of next year should start to fall back quite sharply to more like, by the end of 2023, 5%, which is still very high, still well above our target, but it's
better than where we're at now.
It certainly is.
But so boiling things down then to a Shropshire level, are there certain sectors of the economy which are at the sharp end of what's going on at the moment? And from a Shropshire point of view, does that mean that the county is at greater risk or at lesser risk in some of these areas than other parts of Britain?
Okay. Well, if you look at the Shropshire economy, let me make 2 points. I mean, the recession itself will probably come on to what the forecasts look like, but we've seen a contraction in GDP already. There is a concern about recession. The Shropshire, but hopefully that will be relatively shallow. The Shropshire economy is generally a relatively resilient one because it's not overly skewed towards particularly vulnerable sectors. And also it's largely SME based, and also household incomes are at a reasonable level. You haven't got the concentration of vulnerable households that say we've got in other parts of the region. So broadly speaking, actually, you're looking at a fairly resilient economy, but obviously within that, there are some vulnerabilities.
Anybody got any questions for them? We've got loads more, but anybody got anything else they want to add at this point? We'll keep going. Well, I mean, we're going to be talking about skills and recruitment with our panel in a few minutes' time, but why is the labour market so tight? Because in my sort of fundamental good old O-level economics days, I always thought if we're entering into a time of recession, that creates unemployment, and so there's lots of people looking for jobs, but that doesn't seem to be the case now.
Exactly. Because we've had these unprecedented effects, actually the economy is not necessarily behaving in the way we've expected it to. And just to sort of put this into context, with unemployment at 3.6%, the lowest it's been since 1974, we've had really a supply side shock. That's the best way to sort of describe it, which is becoming increasingly apparent. As the pandemic recedes, things aren't coming back quite to normal. And there's a number of factors that I think, people would suggest are contributing to this tightness. Very briefly, those include demographic factors. The workforce is aging, so basically the supply of working age population is shrinking, so that's a sort of slow burn issue in the background. Since Brexit, that has impacted on the availability of migrants from Eastern Europe and Europe generally, so that's a factor. But again, there is something specific to the UK here. And this is the point I really want to sort of focus on, and this is part of the shock that we've seen. And that is essentially that the UK, unlike most other advanced economies, possibly with the exception of the US, but unlike most advanced economies, we now have higher levels of economic inactivity than we did, much higher than pre-pandemic, whereas for these other countries, by and large, their economic inactivity levels are lower than where they were pre-pandemic. So what's driven that increase, which basically is substantial? So we've lost something like 500,000 workers. Those essentially relate to, the biggest driver of those is ill health. So things like long COVID, chronic sickness, mental anxiety, which I hope the audience aren't getting and I'm not contributing to here. And there's a relationship probably there with some of the significant backlogs we've seen with the NHS. And that's quite important because that means that the labour market could remain tighter for longer, because you just assumed that if economic inactivity levels are driven by long-term sickness, that's not going to unwind quickly. And so what that does is contribute to the tightness of the labour market further out, and that underpins some of the wage inflationary pressures that we've been seeing.
And from all of these issues that you've talked about, what are your contacts in Shropshire telling you that they are most concerned about at the moment? Is there a sort of a league table, a shopping list of these?
Yeah, I mean, let me think. So actually there's a couple of things that have come into sharper focus since May, and a few new things. So the things that have come in, that I mentioned back in May, that have come into sharper focus have been the concerns around the slowing economy. That slowing economy has now arrived, but it's arrived at a time for a lot of firms where energy costs particularly and labour costs are much higher. And that then becomes a concern, because in a slowing economy, it gets very difficult then to pass those cost increases through into prices, particularly for consumer-related businesses, because real incomes are being squeezed, and if you put your prices up too much, then you're going to lose demand. So that has come into firmer focus for firms, and is putting particular pressure on the retail and hospitality sector. Secondly, I mentioned last time, and that continues to be the case, despite the fact that the economy is slowing, the labour market remains tight, recruitment remains an issue, even though hiring intentions have eased a little bit. A lot of firms suggest that their inability to recruit is actually biting, to the extent that their sales and revenues, if they could recruit in the way that they want to, would be higher. So when we look at the economy and the performance of the economy, that is being affected not just by demand side factors, but by an array of supply side factors. So those were in play before and have continued, and I'd probably add to that a couple of other ones, notably, not surprisingly, financial conditions have tightened. They've tightened because bank rate has gone up on the one hand, but also the risks facing the economy have increased, and the combination of those mean that the availability of finance and the cost of finance, particularly for SMEs, and bearing in mind Shropshire is largely an SME economy, have started to rise. Now, for some firms, you know, that is going to impact on their viability, and we've certainly seen in terms of insolvencies, those have started to tick up. Small firms, construction sector, retail sector particularly, but generally, you know, this is affecting firm behaviour and the things that they're doing as we see the economy slow. Generally, the supply chain issues have continued to ease, and those global cost shocks have continued to ease as well. But, you know, because I don't want it to sound overly negative, let's just put this in context. There are still certain sectors who are performing very strongly, particularly ones who've been facing capacity constraints for some time. So anything in IT and digital continues to do well. Recruitment firms are continuing to see quite strong revenues, and sort of basic services such as audit, you know, still sort of robust demand. So it's by no means sort of doom and gloom across the economy, but there is clear evidence that it is slowing.
And some of the impacts of that will be, there'll be a bit of a lag before it all starts to come through, I guess, as well, won't there? Has anybody got any questions for Glyn while I've got them here?
No.
This is looking good.
Good.
In that case, final point then, really. I mean, I think the last time we were talking, you just produced a quarterly forecast, and there's the latest quarterly forecast out a couple of weeks ago. How dramatically are each of those changing, and are there any particular things out of the latest one that you ought to flag up, that you feel is important to flag up today for Shropshire businesses that you've not covered yet?
Okay, so just by sort of way of context again, I'll probably state, you know, it's just interesting to note that there are some distinguishing features facing the UK, in that, again, as an economy overall, we've not yet come back to our pre-pandemic levels of output, which distinguishes the UK from and most of the G7 economies. And the forecast does not look particularly great, not surprisingly, given the very challenging conditions that we are facing. So, you know, clearly businesses are expecting a slowdown, and are right to expect that. We see that GDP is likely to contract. We're seeing that Q3. We're expecting that to continue through next year and into the first half of 2024. The good news is, which seems to be mirrored by in the discussions we are having with most businesses and the behaviour that we're seeing, is that looks like it will be a relatively shallow recession, nothing like the general financial crisis or the sort of contraction we saw in 2008. But the good news in terms of, again, when we speak to most businesses, they've been through the pandemic, they've been through a recession, you know, they've been through a pandemic and Brexit. They'll come through the recession, particularly if it's relatively shallow. The difficult thing for firms at the moment, I guess, is this is coming at a time when their cost bases are increasing, and particularly those energy costs, which will be challenging.
So just as well, they're battle hardened then, really, isn't it, from that point of view? Glyn, thank you so much for coming in.
Pleasure.
It's always great to see you. Ladies and gentlemen, Glyn Jones from the Bank of England.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glyn. Well, we're going to take a short break now, and then we're going to be back with the panel debate.
The law in England is changing to help catch a killer before more lives are lost. The killer is known to lie in wait before overcoming victims.
There's a killer in your house. It's colorless, odorless, tasteless, and kills whole families. But now the law is changing to stop it. Landlords must install a carbon monoxide alarm in all rooms with a fuel-burning appliance. Do you have enough ACO alarms?
Welcome back to Shropshire Business Live TV. We are live here in the theatre at Pressfield School in Shrewsbury in front of an audience today. Give us a round of applause, folks, for our panel. We're about to introduce Richard Sheehan from Shropshire Chamber, Holly Whittles wearing one of her many hats for the Federation of Small Businesses, and Graham Guest, Principal and Chief Executive at Telford College, but also the Skills Champion at the Marches Let. That's right, isn't it, Graham?
It is, thank you, Col.
Skills and recruitment, Glyn was touching on it as we were just talking about it earlier, but Richard, I mean, the Chamber does a quarterly survey as well, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why are businesses finding it so hard to recruit staff at the moment in the Chamber's
Well, I think we heard from Glyn there that there are a number of different factors, but it gets wider than that. I think the pandemic has definitely changed people's relationship with the workplace in many cases. We've seen many examples of vacancies that people have struggled to fill because they can't accommodate a work from home environment. And that's become something which is much more important to many people. It may not quite be so now, the energy price is what it is and you've got to heat your house, but nevertheless it changed the whole attitude towards work and the workplace. So that really had a bearing. Glyn touched on the migrant labour issue here in Shropshire with the sectors that we have representing around agriculture, tourism, leisure, hospitality. They've been hit really, really hard by the loss of migrant labour. There's no question about that, and we've been flagging that up for well over a year, but sadly we are still where we were. So progress needs to happen, and it needs to happen quite quickly.
And Holly, as Glyn also said, you know, Shropshire very heavily biased towards small businesses, and they have their own particular problems from this point of view, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. Like the FSB have found 78% of those small businesses are really struggling to recruit. They just can't find the right staff with the right skills at the right place at the right time. And, you know, as Richard said, we've got an ageing population in the Marches, we're a rural area, and businesses are being hit with all sorts of rising costs. So, you know, recruitment on top of that is a massive problem.
Graham, what sort of tools then can education help to provide businesses with to help them on this way? And, you know, I know, you know, there's a lot of campaigns at the moment for businesses to work more closely with education than they ever have before. So you're out there talking to businesses, aren't you? And what are they telling you about what
Absolutely. We work incredibly closely with both Richard and Holly. Holly's a great supporter of the college. I mean, we, as a college, we've seen a change. I mean, we've been successful in recruiting all of our teaching staff, but you know it's a struggle for other staff recruiting. So we feel everybody's pain. I think what we're beginning to see, the first time in 30 odd years in education, some businesses, those that can have the capacity to begin to think further ahead. You know, we're talking to a number of businesses that are saying we need to now project 5 years. They're talking to us, can we work with the schools for a pipeline through school, college, university? I think that's really positive. We do, I mean, Holly's a great ambassador for the college. I'm not saying that because Holly's here, but, you know, work experience, apprenticeships, there's a plethora of opportunities for employers to get involved at the moment. But I would imagine for many employers, and you know, we've got employer hubs, they need that person now, you know, and education can't always provide that. You can't suddenly find a well-trained trained machinist to operate tomorrow. But there's lots of initiatives going on, and I'm sure Richard will talk about the latest one that sees education and business come even closer together to meet this challenge.
Richard, are there specific sectors that are really needing some support now?
All of them.
All of across the board?
Virtually all of them. Like Holly's survey, our research has shown locally 76% of those responding struggle to recruit. It is a major issue, but I think that the whole ethos in terms of recruitment has changed. Only recently, it's taken a long time for businesses to realise that actually they've got to sell themselves now because it is such a tight labour market. It's almost a reversal. We're in a situation where no longer do people apply for a job and they get interviewed and they go in and they have to sell themselves. It's actually turned around the other way.
It seems to me candidates give you a counter offer sometimes as an employer these days, don't they? So, well, that's what you're offering me. Let's see if there's any movement on this.
Well, you're absolutely right, and I think that can be about the actual physical workplace and the environment within it. But touching on the environment, it's another issue that's actually impacting on people's decision making. Some businesses now have to make sure they have a very clear and transparent environmental policy to ensure they attract particularly young people who see that as really, really important now. If you can't demonstrate that you're focusing very much on reducing your carbon footprint and you're involved in reducing sort of impact on environment, you're going to struggle to recruit somebody who that will probably be quite important to. So the whole sort of the way of recruiting has turned on its head, and that's not going to change anytime soon, because, as I've said right from the beginning, we've not seen any major significant changes. I think one issue we might see, and I think Glyn touched on the economically inactive. You know, a lot of people decided through COVID and when they were in a situation where they were furloughed that actually, you know what, I can manage in a different way. I've probably got just about enough to get by, and I'm going to be in that. I'm going to stay at home and I'm going to potter around and do other things. But the inflationary pressures that are coming in now are starting to get people to look slightly differently at that. And you know what, this might not be quite as comfortable as I thought, and so there is an opportunity for businesses to bring back into the workplace some of these termed economically inactive who took that decision primarily because financially they could do it. Now, doing that, of course, is going to have to demonstrate flexibility. Businesses are going to have to recognise these people, again, their relationship with the workplace has changed, and therefore they need to find different ways of actually working with these people and supporting these people, so that it's almost a case of, well, this is how I'd like it to be. Okay, we'll find a way of making that be.
Because there's actually, isn't there, probably, there's a lot of people, they're not completely economically inactive. They're sort of 50-50, aren't they? They've decided maybe they don't want to work full-time anymore, or they only want to work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. And Holly, for small businesses, that's hard, isn't it, to sort of accommodate sometimes people's particular work patterns that they request.
Especially if you're a small business and you're already locked into a tenancy, for example. So you've still got to turn the lights on, the electric on, whether there's one person or 20 people sitting in that room. So it's a very fine balance trying to open it out for hybrid working or working from home, whilst also you've still got these business costs coming in. And you know, we've just been negotiating a lease where they wanted to put our lease up by 50%. Our energy prices for the electric for the building have gone up by triple. So that's massive things, as well as I'm having to now say you can work from home, then you've got to kit them out for working at home as well, because you're still responsible for their health and well-being. So it's a real challenge.
And as a percentage of the overall turnover of a small business, that's a much bigger chunk, isn't it?
Yes.
Graham, do you think there's a piece of work that needs to be done to encourage people to stay in Shropshire, to show young people, the next generation of the workforce, that actually it's all here on the doorstep? They don't need to leave Telford, Shrewsbury, Oswestry, Bridgnorth to go and do what they want to do. You know?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Shropshire's is like the world's best kept secret in a way, isn't it? But sometimes it's too secretive, and we've got some fantastic companies. Richard and I were only talking yesterday afternoon actually about some of the fascinating companies that are hidden, and I don't think people realise. It's a great place to live, and it's just promoting those opportunities for young people and adults to stay here and train and progress, because it is a great place to work, and there's some fascinating companies over the whole of Shropshire.
You're from the Chamber, Richard, obviously, and you're Graham from the college, at Telford College. How are you working together to plug any skills gaps?
Well, Graham touched on it earlier on, that the Department of Education issued a contract recently for the Local Skills Improvement Plan, as they've termed it, which is effectively giving business a voice in shaping the curriculum going forward. It's always had a voice. Fortunately, we've got some very good colleges on the patch who engage with business on a regular basis and help to shape the needs. It's a big geography across the Marches. There's an awful lot of people that no matter how much resource people have, they're hard to reach. They need a voice, they need that support and that help. So Graham and I both sit on a board, which is, and Holly indeed, which is driving forward the new skills agenda. And working in collaboration and partnership, we will make sure that what is available in the future is absolutely what businesses are asking for. The challenge, of course, and the caveat is making sure they know what they need, because of course that is a big challenge short term, particularly with people battening down the hatches a little bit.
Can I just add to that as well? As part of that survey about recruitment and skills, we also found that only 17% of businesses are actually engaging with schools and colleges. So I think sometimes small businesses are just leaving it to the big business to speak for them. So actually we need to encourage businesses through things like the boards to actually speak up and communicate what they actually need and what they want. Because especially when Ofsted are coming in and looking at things like Gatsby Benchmark 4, which is all about meaningful interaction between business and education. So I think we also, as business owners, need to step up and help bridge that gap between the two.
So from a college's point of view then, Graham, are you wanting more businesses to come and speak to you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we actively work with 500. So, you know, that's not 500 that get a Christmas card, that's 500 that do business with us. But you know, we'd love 1,500. But you know, Holly's those active businesses, and I understand. I mean, if you're a small business like Holly, and you say come to a meeting, that's time out of your, you know. Yeah. But the more businesses that engage, I just wanted to go back to Richard's point, because the opportunity, you know, the data that Richard's team will collect working with the businesses it could be a game changer. Without boring everybody, the funding constraints that colleges have don't allow us to support businesses like we should do. Hopefully the information, I'm sure it will allow us to flex that, which will be a game changer for the region. We've already seen that with a project that we're working on, which was working in collaboration with Richard in the NHS, where it's had a significant impact in recruiting healthcare assistants across the whole of the marches. And if we can replicate that in every sector, that will just really help Holly and all the other businesses in the marches. So it's a great opportunity to see businesses and providers work together.
So Richard, really then, it's important that businesses do get involved in surveys and provide you with data and speak to you guys at the Chamber. Yeah,
we recognise that people are surveyed to death. And so we've got to be mindful of that. But this is absolutely a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have a voice in something which will help shape their sector, the business community and the economy of our county. They really, really shouldn't waste it. If you sit on your hands and don't do anything, don't moan, because you've had your chance. And it is so important. Over the coming months, people will be engaged by my team and many other teams as well to get them to get involved. And it is absolutely critical that they get involved so that we can make sure that the business community of Shropshire gets the support it needs, that our providers are funded correctly and to the right levels to deliver that support the business needs, because ultimately it's the economy that will take us through this thing.
I was reading a survey earlier this week which suggested 3 areas that are the biggest problem for businesses when it comes to recruiting suitable staff is lack of basic IT skills and lack of basic maths and English. Holly, would you echo that one?
Absolutely, yeah. And again, we found 48% of businesses are reporting they need digital skills. And certainly for the area that I'm in, we do data analytics. Maths is the one thing that we recruit for, because you've got to have that statistical brain that likes puzzle and problem solving. So for us, that is a core critical skill. But also I'm looking for other skills. I'm looking for entrepreneurship, creative skills, interpersonal skills. And I think that's something that's lacking in the education system at the moment at schools. They're not getting a chance to be creative, and that's the pivotal point where their brains are wiring and we're snubbing it out of them. So by the time they get to college and university, they've already sort of programmed into a set way of thinking. So I would like to see more of those entrepreneurial skills coming out.
And Graham, things like basic maths and English is a foundation that can just open more doors for people, isn't it, going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's a sad statistic, isn't it, that, you know, and Jeremy Hunt announced that, you know, they've appointed the SAR to look at maths and English. 48% of our young people still leave school without maths and English. And that's a, you know, one, it's a massive investment, but, you know, for the economy, that's poor. I mean, we have over 2,000 students post-16. and 700 of them will come to us without maths and English. That's a massive impact for us in terms of finances, but it's a massive impact in terms of moving on to work with companies like Holly. So we've got a big project in terms of the town centre in Telford in terms of digital and maths, and working with some of the most deprived areas of the region to engage people into maths, both adults and 16 to 18, so we can improve that level, because we all know that the job market is moving to level 3 and above. So without those core skills, we can't support the economy. But there is a piece of work to be done at that, that school level. We work closely with schools, and I really do understand the constraints by which they operate in, and a lot of head teachers would change those constraints if they were able to support businesses more.
Anybody got any questions, observations, anything? Yeah, let's get a microphone over to you. And then introduce yourself and tell the world. I know Graham says we're best kept secret here, but we've got viewers from New York to Bulgaria watching this today, Graham.
Hello, I'm Diane Brown from Thomas Consulting, and we're civil and structural design engineers. And it's very interesting listening to those statistics about the maths and English. And do we know why that there's only that percentage, or the huge percentage, that haven't got the skills? Because that's obviously then got the knock-on effect to the number of teachers that you're going to have teaching maths and English. But also maths is a key skill for our business, and when I left school it was one of the, maths and English were the two that you needed to walk away with regardless of what job you went for. So I suppose my question is, do we know why those statistics are so low? Has engagement in the classroom on it changed? Do we need to try and, I don't know, make it more interesting so that they're engaged more? Or is it just I don't know, just there is the lack of perhaps teaching staff that therefore it's dropping down?
I couldn't answer that, unfortunately, because I don't come from a school sector. I come from a post-16 sector. So, but I would imagine there's a plethora of, and I don't think that's without schools really trying to do that. I think if there was a head teacher here, they may well say government policy over, doesn't matter the colour of the vote, has consistently changed policy on English and maths. And you only have to work with your son or daughter to know that the delivery of it is changed, and therefore support and that is confusing, I'm guessing. And whereas what you need through any government is consistency. And I know from my sector, policy's changed almost rapidly, without them probably thinking 5-10 years ahead. It's termed on a government, and those policies can change. And I think to really survive, you need a joint party education policy that everybody buys in, no matter what the change in government is. You're going to carry on with it. It is my view. I mean, Richard and I spoke yesterday that the initiative we've got is great, but should there be a change in 12 or 18 months' time, we could be in a different direction, and all that great work could be lost for a different policy.
Yeah.
Richard?
Yeah, I think they're not seen as sexy subjects, are they, anymore? I don't think. I think there's a need in terms of mentoring and to get back to some of the basic disciplines, because they haven't really gone away. I sympathise with schools because they're measured to death and tasked to do certain things. You know, in an ideal world, and let's hope from our skills work that we do now that there'll be something coming out that actually says to the Department of Education, you know what, we need to get businesses and schools much closer together than they are, not just one or two, but a lot. That becomes a challenge in the market town areas, but hopefully when young people hear from business owners and business leaders that you know, maths, science, all these things are still important, then there's some work that can be done to try and encourage them to take more attention to it. We know there's been a challenge in terms of number of teachers, of course, over time, which hasn't helped. And COVID hasn't helped, of course, as well, because Graham will know much more about this than I will, but I'm imagining that remote learning is probably not as effective as face-to-face stuff, I think, and therefore that's going to be starting to manifest itself a little further down the line as we start to get people taking those exams. But business has a part to play in this, and they need to step up and make sure that work experience is exactly that. It's a really good experience. It paints a picture of what the workplace is. You don't sit in the workplace on your mobile phone in the corner doing stuff like that. That's not what it's like. You don't turn up an hour late just because you didn't feel like getting out of bed because it's nice and warm there, and that's not what the world of work is like, not for most anyway. And so consequently, I think there's some real basic education that needs to go back into back in terms of businesses and education establishments working much closer together if we're to fix this.
Holly, you're nodding along. What are your thoughts?
I think it goes back to, I think businesses have got to get more involved with schools, because they need to explain to children why they're learning maths and what they can then do with it. They just are going through, this is algebra, this is Pythagoras, this is a matrices. They're probably thinking, what am I going to use this for? What's the real world application of learning that? Well, why not teach them about how to set up a pizza business, something that they're interested in? And this is why you need maths, because you need to calculate your cost of sales, you need your profit and your turnover. Apply it to a business scenario. I think they'll then get it. But I think businesses have got to help schools with this.
I think when I did my work experience at school, and which was 26 plus years ago, my first introduction to business was doing 2 weeks of placement just before the summer holidays, and that was it. So there was no interaction really with businesses when I was at school. So I think you're right, it's got to grow, hasn't it?
And I'm an enterprise advisor, so I'm going into schools advising them on this kind of stuff and the strategy. And they get a lot of pushback from senior leadership on allowing students to actually go and do work experience. So one school I work with, sixth form can't do that, they're far too busy. Well, you've got PD days, you've got holidays. So there are definitely times when they can do that work experience. So I think schools need to value the actual going out into work as well and allow them to do it.
I also think as well, probably the final point to mention, we talk about qualifications and how important they are, but it's the softer skills as well. It's the interpersonal skills. It's creating rounded individuals that can walk confidently into a workplace. And as Richard said, in the last 2 years during COVID, and people have been blended learning or isolated at home, the ability to just actually be part of the human race and be confident enough to interact with strangers is overlooked a lot of the time, isn't it? And
they're all stuck on their phones. They don't know how to speak to people anymore.
Somebody said to me many years ago now, and obviously we're heading towards it, that we'll all lose the ability to speak. We'll just squeak, click and make button type noises because of all the technology that we're embracing. And there is no substitute for social interaction and the strength and the benefit that it brings. But I think just going back to the school bit, because I say I do have great sympathy for the schools, because I recognise that they are measured to death on specific things, and so their time, resource and energy to step outside of that and make a more rounded person isn't there. So I'm really hopeful that the LSIP report will come back, and actually part of this will be thrown out, where decision makers and policy makers down in the Westminster bubble will actually get it, that actually, it's not great, what you're doing is broken, it isn't working properly, but you're making it that way, so let's fix it together.
I just to add to what Richard said, we're a qualification measured education system, and every year I will talk to all of our new students, and I will say to them, say if I've got 500 students doing level 3 digital, and their view and their arrival will be, in the main, if I achieve this level 3 program, I'm going to get a job. And I say to them, but 500 of you are going to get that qualification. So what are you going to add to your CV that makes it that Holly says, I'm going to employ that person? And I think there's a little bit more of a need, that qualifications are only one tool in the toolbox. No matter how tight the market is, it just makes you more sellable.
Absolutely. Anybody else got any more questions for our panel? before we let them go out into the rain that sounds like it's hammering
It
down on
does,
the room.
yeah.
I think it proves we're live though, doesn't it, to be honest? We're going to be hearing from the new head at Pressfield School after our break in a couple of minutes, but before we do, can we say a big thank you to our panel, to Graham, to Holly and to Richard. Thank you very much. Back in a minute or so. Award-winning news, views and analysis. That's what you get with Shropshire Business Magazine. We celebrate the county's successes. We get the inside stories from our innovators and entrepreneurs, and we cover the big talking points across all corners of the county. We're proud to have been named Midlands Magazine of the Year, and proud too to be a founding partner of Shropshire Business Live TV. Download the latest edition of our magazine from our website right now and drop us a line to find out how we could be putting your company's story into our headlines.
Shropshire Live. News and entertainment for Shropshire. Shropshire Live.
Welcome back to Shropshire Business Live TV. We are live here in the theatre at Pressfield School in Shrewsbury, and it's thanks in part to the gentleman who's sitting next to us now, the head Nick Robinson, who is relatively, can we still call you new? Are you new here?
Yes, yeah, September I started, so it doesn't feel quite new. I've settled well into the post and yeah, but relatively new in appointment terms, yeah.
Well, thank you for hosting us today.
Absolutely.
Tell us a bit about you and your background then.
Yeah, so I was previously head at a school in North Devon. I was there for about 5 years and worked in the independent sector for about 20 years now. Before that, I was involved in professional sports. I was a swimming coach.
It was interesting. I mean, you've coached Olympians and all sorts of.
Yeah, it was a while back now, but through the '96 Olympics and 2000 Olympic Games, which was a fantastic experience. Learnt a huge amount, and you know, listening to the panel just now, transferable skills in terms of what I do now has been hugely beneficial.
So, what attracted you about coming to Pressfield then?
It's a fantastic school. It has a great reputation in terms of the quality of provision that it provides for its pupils. So the role really attracted me. It's come out of COVID in a really strong place, whether that's academically, pupil numbers and financially. And so it's a really exciting time to be joining the school. And then as I researched it, I didn't know Shropshire, I didn't know Shrewsbury at all, and it's a fantastic place to live and work. So that, as a package, was very compelling.
We've just seen on screen now some images of the school. Now, Kerry kindly showed us round yesterday, and you drive past this school. I've driven past so many times, Carl, down London Road, and you just don't realise how big the site is, and actually what facilities you've got here.
It is incredible, and I was exactly the same as you when I came to interview. You park at the front and you go into the main offices, and it wasn't till as candidates we were let loose around the grounds, and it is fantastic. We've got 30 acres here. And some incredible facilities, an indoor swimming pool, the theatre that we're in now, workshops for DT, art rooms, sports hall, and pitch space that we can provide a whole range of different sports for all their pupils. So we're very lucky, and it's a beautiful environment to work, which I think is great for the pupils and staff.
And Graham was talking there about, well, all the panel were talking, in fact, about building closer links between business and education going forward. I guess there's a lot of facilities here that local businesses could be maybe making more collaborative use of with
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. And through term time and the holidays, our facilities are available for lettings, and lots of people do take advantage of that, whether that's conferencing, whether it's using our swimming pool, classroom space, holiday camps. It's a great venue if you want to be in the heart of the town, but also have some space as well. So yeah, we'd certainly welcome that.
How important is it, do you think, for your students to start learning about business from an early age?
I think it's really important, but again, going back to the previous panel, I think it's more about what was called the soft skills. You know, I think we're a school, and education's at our heart, and we do those aspects incredibly well. Our English and maths results are phenomenal here. So, but that's a given. That should be a given in any school. I think what we do and what independent schools do particularly well is work on those other skill sets. And we know now in the workplace that things like critical thinking, the relationships, communication skills, empathy are as important, if not more important, than the actual bits of paper that you've got. And for us, it starts at the earliest children that we have here at 3 years old. We reward those, we teach those things, we recognise things. It's part of what we do.
So that means learning in and out of the classroom, presumably then, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the very best kind of learning happens all the time, and in many cases, even without you realising that you are learning. And I think great schools do that. If you look at young children, our youngest children in nursery age, they are learning without even realising they're doing it. They love it, they're engaged with it, it's very practical. And I think the best schools keep that going for longer. Sadly, our education system, if you're not careful, can drive that love of learning out of children, and then you're very much on the back foot. So I think we instill that for far longer because we have a far broader curriculum and the ability to do that.
And choosing a school, it's quite an important decision. It's one of the big important decisions, you know, choosing a school for your child, especially at a young age. What's the ethos of a prep school then?
Yeah, so I think it's one of the most important decisions you're going to make, and I think certainly if you're looking at independent education, it's an investment, so it's got to be right. I think you need to go and look at schools and get a feel. So that would be our first advice: is to go and look around schools, meet with the staff, meet with the children, watch them in that environment. I think parents are very good at having a gut feel of what's right and what's right for their children. And I think for me, it's about every child here feeling valued, being nurtured, finding their skills, finding their passions, and as I said earlier, really enjoying learning. We can't underestimate that.
But this also puts Shropshire on the national map, isn't it? Because I mean, obviously, you've got Shropshire families here, but you draw your catchment area is much broader, isn't it, than just the council?
Yeah, we are, and I think good schools and again good independent schools are drawing people, particularly out of more populated areas, and COVID I think has accelerated that. So particularly from the southeast, London, and perhaps more populated areas of the Midlands, we're finding interest nationally that people are wanting to come to Shropshire, mainly for lifestyle or work reasons, but also because they know that there are some really good schools here, and Pressfeld's one, and their children can have a fantastic education, and I think that's all testament to the area, and it's a great place to bring up children. It really is.
So what's on your bucket list then going forward in your first year or a couple of years?
I think I'm lucky in that it's a great school, and that all the foundations are there, so it's not a job that needs demonstrable change straight away. And again, linking to my background in sport, it's often easy to come in to a new school or a new business and change things for change's sake. And what I learnt through sport is you look to make improvements first and identify where things can be better, and everywhere can be better, and then you look at how you're going to change them rather than the other way around. So we're having a little bit of a look at our curriculum, particularly at the older end, so years 12 and 13, and again, to ensure that we're really making it future-proof in terms of that skills-based side of things. We've got some exciting plans with regard to further facilities. We're a business, and I think we're also very keen to be at the quality end of education, and therefore that does involve continuous investment, and therefore facilities investment is there as well.
Have you spotted any Olympic swimming potential here yet?
There's some very talented children in the pool, and they're lucky, they have access to the pool here from 7:30 in the morning. Some of them are in training in the mornings. They'll have breakfast on site, go into their lessons and hit the ground running with a good wake up, which is great.
Brilliant.
Excellent. Well, thank you for hosting us today. It's
Yes,
been a
thank
real
you.
pleasure. And we've had 4 seasons outside today.
Yeah,
Wait and see what's coming out the door.
Yeah.
So
Thank you very
we're
much for
swimming
joining
through
us.
across the car park. But thank you, Nick, for
Absolutely.
joining us.
No
We'll be
problem.
back with some more on Shropshire Business Live TV after this short break.
I think that the facilities that this college have to offer are brilliant because compared to other colleges we have an amazing skills lab. The aim of it is that it's a safe space for students to learn. We also have access to lecturers who are current registered nurses. So Telford College has some really good links with environments such as hospitals, special needs schools and care homes to help students with placement to learn skills. I feel like I've improved massively as a person and I've gained an amazing amount of knowledge and experience to help me progress later on.
Welcome back to Shropshire Business Live TV here at the theatre in Prestfeld School in Shrewsbury. We're broadcasting to you live this afternoon. Now, usually on the show, we have Nick Jones popping in to say hello to us, don't we, Chris?
We
Our
do.
resident Ask the Expert who talks about all things wealth management. He can't be with us today, but we didn't want to miss out on the opportunity to hear about quite an incredible few weeks that he's had. He was in the studio last month with his backpack ready to head off to Nepal on an incredible adventure. Chris caught up with him earlier this week, but before we hear that, let's have a little look at what Nick got up to out in Nepal.
Hi, I'm Nick Jones, part of Throgmorton Associates, based in Shropshire and Leicestershire. First morning, we had the chain of bricks that was coming down from the hill at the top, and all of them then had to be stacked behind. This is the second stack now. They started building a second one because all the ones have gone inside, and it was taller than me, the actual stack. 2,500 bricks apparently. Not all of them pass the quality control. They get thrown over there. Then in the afternoon, we started then, and there was a massive hole need to be dug over to my right shoulder, but I worked out really quite good with a wheelbarrow, so that's been my thing. And everyone's so happy and cheery, and we've all worked out what our skills are. We're all interacting well as a team, we're looking out for each other, and we're having a great time. So the fundraising, I managed to get some Wi-Fi yesterday, and I checked on the page, and we're over 13,000 now on our page, which is fantastic. Personally matching it all, so that's great. So it's 26,000 before the SUP matching, so we're over 52,000 now, which is absolutely amazing. But we see here what's going on, what they're doing with it, and it's really going to change lives. We had a tour yesterday of the existing vocational centre and met some of the people doing the tailoring course, and they're just so happy and pleased and grateful for the opportunity that they've been given. And this is an extension of that, so this is going to train even more of these young people to go back up and set up businesses in their own villages. So it's really important, it's massively important. But everyone's so happy and friendly. They've got very little. They don't need very little. It's taught me a lot about being materialistic about things. So for all the donations so far, thank you very much. If there's more to give, if you've been watching from a distance, you'll be thinking, oh yeah, when they go, when they start, now's the time to get it done. But I can't wait, and then we can't wait to start the trek next week. It's going to be brilliant.
Well, from Nepal to Shrewsbury, welcome back, Nick. That was some video.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, fantastic. What an adventure.
What was your experience overall? Because we last saw you in our studio in Frankwell, and you had your big bag that you were ready to pack and all the equipment.
Yeah.
So from there, what was the journey?
Yeah, you're right. When we came to Frankwell with the big blue bag and all of the kit, I was full of anticipation and a little bit of trepidation. And here I am now, back having completed the challenge and the task, and experienced Nepal, Kathmandu, Pokhara. Met so many fantastic people, took part on the building site, took part in the trekking, and it all seems a whirl, it all seems a blur.
So watching the video, Nick, that you took there, how many days into that was that? Because you were passing bricks down and everything.
Yeah, so the build element was right at the start. So we got there and then went to the site the next day when everybody come across from different parts of the UK, all met together in a hotel in Kathmandu, made our way to the Kathmandu Valley where the building site was. Had a welcoming from some of the dressmakers, so they lined the road and they gave us flowers and sang songs. It was quite emotional.
I bet it
quite a greeting. Oh, amazing reception. And then once we were there, we had three full days on the building site. One of the first tasks was the passing of bricks, because there was a huge pile at the top of a hill, and they needed to be at the bottom of the hill where the build was going on. So we formed a human chain and spent the first hour and a half just passing bricks from one to another and moved 2,500 bricks by hand. That was our welcome to Nepal.
I know you did a lot of preparation beforehand with physical training, and obviously you put a lot into it. Was that worthwhile?
Yeah, what I quite quickly realised was that I was relaxed about the physical challenge because I put the work in. So the time spent with Endorph in Shrewsbury and Connor and Lucy and the team was time well spent. So the physical demands of the building section, quite a bit of my role involved being on the wheelbarrow, as you've just seen in the video. And we must have moved 2 ton of soil and mud and sticky stuff. We built a massive hole, dug a massive hole, and then moved that to the other side of the building. In the gym, there's a sledge that you can put weights on and you pull it up and down the gym, and I spent quite a bit of time on that, and I didn't know that that would be the task that I ended up doing. But without that, I think I'd been struggling more, but fitness-wise.
So it's very worthwhile then doing
But very much so, yeah.
And in terms as well as the physical side of things, in other skills for maybe you could then use here in terms of management and things like that, and working with colleagues and other charitable things, what have you learned?
There are quite a few transferable skills. One of them, I suppose, was that working together as a team. So everybody on the building site had different aptitudes. Some of us are different builds and physically more able than others. And we split into teams to do certain tasks and then worked within those teams. So we had some of the guys that were quite fit and strong, some not so strong, but able to then be helped as part of the little team to move the barrow around or to dig the deeper holes or to do whatever. Some people were great and creative and they were really good at mixing cement. Others were great at carrying bricks, and they had the big thing that they were using a basket to actually take from the pile that we built up into the building,
right.
And they did 50 or 60 journeys with that thing. So
that's quite
real exertion, yeah. So the benefits of working as a team were great. The time that we'd spent in the lakes was brilliant because we knew each other a lot better on a personal level, and then you could also tell if people were struggling a little bit but not telling anybody. So we were very conscious that with the altitude and with the change of food, there were all kinds of things that people could have had going on that they didn't want to share, but we had a buddy system that meant we were looking out for somebody. So that was massively important, and collectively we saved 84 working days on the site. The foreman told us at the end, so we were really proud of that.
So Nick, you've been working on the site, and then after that you did quite a big trek, didn't you?
Yeah, so after 4 days of camping on the site in tents next to the actual building site, we then went to a nice hotel for showers and shaves.
I bet that was very welcome.
Best shower of my life, best shower I've ever had. And then we got a flight to Pokhara from Kathmandu, and that's where we were due to start the actual trek, which was another 4-day adventure.
And if you could kind of sum up your time, what would you say?
I think to sum up the time, it's really difficult in one sentence. You know, I'm not a man of few words either. I can certainly share experiences, but the whole thing was fantastic from start to finish. So on the building site, the interaction with the kids at the local orphanage, we organised a sports day. We had a game of football against some Nepali kids. That was just on the week 1. Week 2, the trekking, seeing the sights, watching the monkeys in the trees, watching the people who've got nothing, and they're working as soon as it's sunrise. They're working on the fields and creating something for their family to live on. It was absolutely amazing. And the camaraderie between the teams. So we've got a group WhatsApp that we still, it's one of the guys' birthdays today. Happy birthday, Martin. And we're keeping in touch, and we're seeing the progress from the site.
So when's the building due to finish then?
So due to finish in March next year.
And will you see photos of the final building?
Yeah, hopefully photos, videos. We've got a member of the team, Hazel, who's a trustee of Supporting Nepal's Children, and she lives in Kathmandu part-time, so she can nip to the site and shows updates. We've also got plaques and things that we've left there to be put in classrooms. There's one that's on my Enthuse page, which is a picture of Ethan and I and a famous Henry Ford quote.
Picture, yeah.
You've seen the picture, yeah. So that's going to be quite amazing to see that in a finished building. That's going to be something else.
So here we are then back in the UK, and we're in turbulent times financially. What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
It's interesting times when it comes to clients and the conversations that we're having. A lot of time people feel that they need to do something because things are turbulent. Quite often the worst time to act is when things are down. So if they just feel that they're keeping happy by moving out of markets or in cashing or changing funds at exactly the wrong time, they're going to regret it long term. So if the plan is still to retire at a certain age or have a lump sum of a certain value at a certain time, why rip up the plan now just because there's a bit of turbulence? And actually now's a great time to be investing.
I was going to ask that question, Nick.
Well, yeah, we're as busy as ever with new client money coming in, either from new clients or from existing clients who've seen it all before. So personal experience, 2008 and 9, horrendous recession, values were dipping, but the people that fared best left well alone or actually topped up during the dips and come out of it much stronger. So the advice is to seek advice. If people are really worried, if you can't sleep at night, then it's natural to feel that way, and everything's getting more expensive. There's lots of pressures, inflation and interest rates and everything else. But if you don't need the money immediately, don't act now and then regret it long term.
Well, Nick, we hear a lot in the media about the financial situation at the moment, the worst recession ever. Do you think sometimes it's skewed a little bit to get more readers, more viewers, maybe more listeners if it's on the radio?
125%. Yeah. It's frustrating when you're trying to advise people to keep a steady head when every headline, every snippet, everything that's reported is magnified and then shared again. The Chinese whispers of some bad statistics actually become quite depressing, and a lot of people are struggling with mental health at the moment, and really negative headlines about everything's getting more expensive, the recession is going to be deeper than ever before, and all. A recession is just 2 quarters, consecutive quarters of negative growth. So there's no relative feeling to how bad things actually are. If it's going to take a long time to recover, we've been through COVID, we've been through all kinds of pressures, and there's all kinds of demand and supply issues. So this is kind of natural, really. It's uncharted times, and it's really unusual. But if people look after their own affairs and people have advice to look after what they're doing, don't worry too much about other things. Lots of clients have stopped looking at the news and tell me this, and we've sent out weekly updates for those that want them, but a lot of people have said don't bother sending them, because we know things are okay. We know if you need to get us to do anything differently, you're going to be in touch. So it's really important to try and keep as positive as possible, but reasonable, be realistic. And if things are going to be more expensive in the future, perhaps if you can, you need to save a bit more. And perhaps if you're having income coming in now that you don't need, turn the tap down a little bit and let the pot regrow itself a little bit over time.
Is that something you've seen some of your clients do already? Maybe look and think a bit more to the future?
Definitely, yeah. People are frugal generally. Most people are quite conservative when it comes to what they spend, and if they know what their number is, they know how much they need to be able to survive, they're generally okay, and they are then attuned to just ignoring the negativity as much as they can.
If there's one thing then we can take away from your trip to Nepal, what would it be?
Great time of year for looking at what you're doing for next year. I'm a big planner. This trip took over 2 years from planning to execution. I love the idea of your comfort zone and then finding something over there that might stretch you a little bit. That's a little bit scary, a little bit hairy, a little bit, I'm not sure if I could do that or not. Do it, absolutely do it, and you'll have a smile on your face like me once you've achieved it, and then you'll be looking for the next thing. And a lot of people now are asking me what you're doing next, and I don't know. I've got to have a chat with Mrs. Jones about that first, because
you've got to get permission.
Yeah, probably more so than I did last time. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Nick, we'll see you next month. Thank you very much. I'm glad you had such a good trip.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
What an incredible learning journey that was, obviously, for Nick Jones, and as he says, be back in the studio with us for our next show. Now, delighted to be joined now by Kate McDonald from Shropshire Council. Kate, welcome.
Thank you.
Picking up very much, you want to talk about some of the themes which we've already heard about, haven't we, today, particularly during the education panel. Talk to us about apprenticeships, but before you do, in fact, tell us a bit about your job and what you do at the council.
So I currently have 2 hats at the council. So I work in organisational development as part of the wider HR team, but I'm also the upskill programme lead. So upskill is our project, which encompasses the apprenticeship levy. It also has work experience, and then traineeships as well is quite a new thing for us. And I think last time I was here, I was talking about Kickstart as well, the DWP scheme. Yeah. So that did form part of our programme when we had that offer available.
So when I saw you last week at the Shropshire Leadership event, you were wearing your other hat, basically.
Yeah, that was right? My events organiser one. Yeah.
So talk to us about the apprenticeships levy. Do companies understand exactly what it is, and are they taking advantage and using it the way it's designed to be used?
So the apprenticeship levy is generally, there's a lot of myths that surround the levy, and I think even though the levy has been in place since 2017, I think there is still a lot of information that businesses don't really understand about the levy. So any large employer that has an annual pay bill of over £3 million will pay 5% into a pot of money which sits in their little account, which is managed by the government, and they can access that levy pot to then use that to pay for training for apprenticeship standards. So that's large employers, but then as well, there are different offers which are open to SMEs as well. So SME organisations can access the apprenticeship levy through a number of routes. They can use an apprenticeship training agency, which isn't the preferred route because there's a cost to that, and of course it's using agency, and the apprentice is then not employed by the actual employer. Then there's a co-investment route. So that means that they can access 95% of the apprenticeship levy funds and then fund the 5% themselves. The preferred route, which we would like to promote as Shropshire Council and something that we could offer, is apprenticeship levy transfer. So that's when these large employers that have their levy pots, they have funds that they haven't spent in the previous financial year, and they can transfer up to 25% of that unspent monies. So Shropshire Council this year has approximately £123,000 left in our levy pot to transfer to SMEs, to non-levy paying organisations, and that can include like non-registered like housing providers or care providers as well. They can then use that to draw down the levy funds to then pay for their employees to undertake levy training.
And given what we've been hearing so far on the show today about how much trouble some companies are having actually finding staff and recruiting, this is the perfect time, isn't it?
Definitely. The apprenticeship levy is a great way to diversify workforces. It's a great way to open up opportunities for people of all ages. There's no age limit. As long as you're over the age of 16, you can do an apprenticeship. And they're a great way for businesses to teach current employees new skills, or they could potentially recruit into posts which they find that are hard to recruit to as well.
Earn while you learn, they always call it.
Yeah, definitely.
So are there any particular restrictions as to how some of these companies can use the money then if they do get it?
Yeah, so apprenticeship levy funding is only to pay for apprenticeship training. So you can't fund salary out of it or anything, and that's the employer's responsibility to pay the apprentice's wage. So they could choose to pay the national apprenticeship wage, which we've heard about the cost of living crisis as well, isn't the highest wage, but it is a wage for a young person potentially who's starting out. Or they could choose to pay the national minimum wage, the living wage, or any wage that they choose really, as long as it's suitable and meets the requirements of the national standards in terms of wages and salaries. So there is that opportunity for businesses to benchmark that where they want. So it's quite a flexible approach. But apprenticeship standards, there's about 650. And they're growing all the time. There's so many out there, and they're available to all businesses. And the way in which a standard works is that, say you've got a business administration level 3 apprentice, doesn't matter what business they're working in, as long as they're doing business admin, that apprenticeship can be made to fit that learning environment.
That's one of the differences, isn't it, from people that maybe have got memories from the past about how apprenticeships used to be and haven't maybe gone back and revisited and looked at how different they are now, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. There's still a lot of stigma around them. Like, a lot of businesses out there still think that it's just about employing young people. And I think over COVID, lots of people, we've talked like earlier around like people being furloughed, people being made redundant as well. And perhaps they need to get out there and learn a new skill. And apprenticeships is a way to do that. And there's no restriction on what age you can be to apply for an apprenticeship vacancy. It's all about learning new skills, really, and that's what we like to promote as an upskill service as well. That it's just about learning something new, applying it to a workplace, and then improving your skills and knowledge, which form part of those apprenticeship standards. But what apprenticeships do as well is teach you behaviours. They teach you transferable skills. Like doing a job and doing an apprenticeship at the same time, you're learning to time manage, you're learning to balance, you're learning to prioritise as well.
Well, and a company can actually teach an apprentice the way that the particular company works, can't they, as well? So.
Yeah, and there is part of an apprenticeship as well that lots of employers do see as a barrier, which is part of the funding rules which govern the apprenticeship levy, because obviously it's government led. But there is something written into those funding rules called off-the-job learning, and I hate that terminology because it's not off the job. It's not a day out of the workplace, and it's all about utilising the time within the workplace to enhance the skills that apprentice is learning. So it could be through shadowing, mentoring, coaching, anything like that can be counted as that off-the-job learning, as well as the time spent with an approved training provider that's teaching those vital knowledge and skills that apprentice needs.
Yeah. So is there a time scale in terms of these SMEs or this pot of money to claim it, and what do people do if they want to know more about it?
So what we would like SMEs to do is have a think about what kind of jobs they've got. We're more than happy to have a conversation with them and help them identify what apprenticeship might be suitable for their business, or potentially what skills they're looking for, and then we could potentially identify what apprenticeships they might want to consider from that point. If they visit shropshire.gov.uk, type in apprenticeship levy transfer to the search bar, it will come up there, and it's a really simple application process. The deadline for this pot is the 24th of December, and then the funding needs to be allocated by the end of the financial year. And every financial year, we'll start the pot again. As long as we've got money there, then we'll offer it out to transfer.
Nice Christmas present, then, isn't it,
yeah.
for somebody? Isn't it?
Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you very much for coming in and telling us all
you.
about it. So SMEs, the message is, how many shopping days till Christmas? About 35, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I think
Like
so.
that, yeah.
Something like that.
Shop
Kate,
for an apprentice.
Kate from Shropshire Council, let's say thanks to Kate. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll take another short break now, and then we'll be joined by two members of the team from ACO to tell us about something we were very excited on the way into the studio this morning to see being advertised on the way into Shrewsbury. See you in a minute.
You walk in and the environment is just vibrant. Surrounding staff in the other departments are so warm and welcoming and friendly, and it just makes it a really lovely place to come and work.
I feel like I've been on a journey here, and I feel like every year it changes for the better.
We've got a lot of vocational staff who specialise in particular vocational areas.
They have given me the opportunity to do my teaching qualifications and also teach alongside it.
Knowing that Telford College were prepared to put me through my teaching qualifications was fantastic.
So it doesn't matter where you start, there's a career opportunity here for everybody.
Well, joining us now here at Pressfield School, as we're live on location today for Shropshire Business Live TV, is Jane Pritchard and Lily Ellis from ACO. Now guys, you've been, along with Carl, you've been hosting it, the Business Roadshow, which has been heading out and about around the county. How's it gone so far?
It's been
good,
really
hopefully.
successful.
So myself, along with Neil Hooper, Managing Director, Matt Small, our Commercial and Finance Director, and Lee Duffy, the Operations and Learning and Development Manager, lots of long titles, along with other Shropshire businesses, have been heading out across the county and just talking about how we've grown and changed since Neil really joined the business, with a big kind of emphasis on team development, personal development, And then we get to talk about corporate social responsibility and all this lovely stuff we do in the community, which is, I think it's gone well. We've had some good responses, so yeah.
Well, as we can see on the screen as well, some of the pictures that we're showing, that's you eating
Oh,
nachos
yeah.
there. Look at
Oh,
that. Because that was the Bridgenall Cinema, and we've been to cinemas, we've been to business premises, we've been to hotels, and I know that one of the things you were very keen to do is actually take this out into different parts of Shropshire, wasn't it, and share some of the top tips as to what's made ACO so successful. You know, I mean, you're two-time reigning company of the year, and joining that in with Shropshire Chamber of Commerce so they can bring forward some other experts who've got some useful business growth tips. It's turned into quite a fun sort of bite-sized package, hasn't it, Jane, really?
Yeah, the feedback's been really, really good. I mean, it isn't all about us and what we do, and we're very proud of, of the success that ACO's become and everything else. It's nice to be able to share those stories and try to inspire others to think about, if they're trying to grow their business, certain things that they may need to take on board, but to have other inputs to it as well, sort of like financial and grant support and recruitment ideas like we've been talking about today, apprenticeships, those types of things. Just, a general all-round support for business, really.
What I think is quite nice, I know I spoke to Neil previously about it when he was on the show, is the fact that ACO is then passing on information and supporting smaller businesses maybe, the tips, the hints and things like that, and how you've grown, and encouraging them to grow as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we've talked, Neil is very passionate about our values, our whole culture that's been developed, and to be able to share those experiences and for other businesses to go away and think about, even if it's just a small part of what they do, how they can improve, then
it's that one nugget of information
do.
sometimes, isn't it? Just that one little thing that will help a business.
It must be, I mean, you both working on the community side of ACO, Lily, it must be a really fulfilling job because you actually get an opportunity to see how the projects that you get involved in really are making a difference to people.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Shropshire. I've always lived here. So I think now having an opportunity to work in a role where my core focus is to make sure we're being as supportive as possible. Being such a big business, we should be doing this, and we try to get others involved as well. But yeah, giving back is always, just a nice thing to do day to day, but when it is literally your job, it's very nice, and we get to meet lots of lovely people along the way.
And you might be Oswestry based, I was going to say, but you are supporting across the county, aren't you?
Yeah, so our main focus is Oswestry, but we do very much support Shropshire in a big way, especially with businesses because, they are so vast across the county. Just like these events that we're hosting with the Chamber. So yeah, just another way that we can help out. So it's not just about charities and schools, we also know the importance of supporting local businesses as well.
And I've discovered during our time on the road that you also have an official job title.
Oh, I know what you're going to say, Carl.
ACO's Chief Chicken Officer?
That's been thrown around a few times.
Explain.
As part of our kind of learning and development programme that Lee has created, we had a day where colleagues were just given free rein. If you could do anything at ACO, what would you do? Give us some ideas. And then one of them was to build a lovely community garden so we could support local children to learn to plant things from seed. And then somehow along the way, chickens were brought into the equation. So we do have 12 chickens at our site in ACO, which we always take people on the tour, so we show them our offices, we show them our auditorium, and then we're like, well, do you want to go see the chickens? And they're always a bit surprised. And then we'll give them some eggs on the way out as well, because we have so many eggs all the time. So that's just another part of our wide-ranging role that's very fun and very good for colleague well-being. They absolutely love going out and just giving the chickens a bit of social time every day.
Eggs are quite a commodity at the moment.
Exactly.
As well.
They are at the moment.
Add to your revenue, you could sell them.
So you're the mother hen, then, are you? Something like that?
I wouldn't say that, but some people have said my hair is a similar comparison to what they look like.
Tell us then about the final Business Growth Roadshow, which is coming up 29th of November, isn't it?
Yeah, so next Tuesday.
I think it is.
8 o'clock in the morning, and that's at Shrewsbury Town Football Club.
I was driving in, I was coming over Telford Way in Shrewsbury up to the golf course island as I see it, and I noticed there was a sign there promoting it.
Oh,
so
really?
yeah, that was
Yeah,
as I was
that's good.
driving in.
That's good.
Everybody's talking about it.
They are.
Everybody's talking about this.
Yeah.
How do you feel the feedback's gone at the moment? You know, I mean, we've had a steady, because the
Yeah.
idea has been, some have been breakfast, some have been lunchtime, some have been evenings, haven't they, to try to make sure at least one of these can fit in with everybody's diary.
Exactly. So we can mix it up with people's commitments and priorities. But the feedback, I mean, we've had a really interesting visit this morning. It just happened to be today. Alderford Lake over in Whitchurch. So I think it was their managing director that attended the Whitchurch event at Stallion AI, and he was really interested in what we were doing. They're wanting to do a lot more there to support their community. They want to do a lot more sort of charitable initiatives and things like that. So Lee and I have actually come here from there this morning to talk to them about how we do things. And they've got a fabulous facility, and you know, there's so much that they can be doing. So feedback's been, from that perspective, it's actually working.
It
So,
shows that the content's connecting with people then,
exactly,
doesn't it?
yeah.
Brilliant.
You've got a busy week then next week as well. Have you got? Is it your sustainability event is next week as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so we're hosting that alongside Shropshire Wildlife Trust. So that is on, remind me the date?
Wednesday 30th.
It's the 30th.
Jane's better dates than I am.
I've got it written down.
Lots of different businesses coming along. So we actually have a speaking slot as well, so myself and Ryan as the sustainability leads. And again, it's just about sharing our wisdom, which is maybe limited, hopefully not, and just kind of encouraging other businesses to get involved in sustainability, because, you know, if you want to believe it or not, if you're not a sustainable business in the next 10, 20 years, you're just going to become redundant. So I think it's just really kind of pushing that agenda, and we're not experts at all, but we are there to kind of give a helping hand. The event is fully booked, so nobody else can sign on to it, unfortunately, but
there's a waiting list, isn't
there is a waiting list, but there is always opportunities to speak to, you know, anyone that's going to be speaking at the event in their own time, because we all just want to, you know, come together and help make a difference.
If there's a waiting list, Jane, then that's really encouraging, isn't it?
It is, because it's been tough, you know, the last couple of years, and getting people out there again. It's been difficult. I think one of the key factors from the event, we've actually got Richard Walker, the managing director of Iceland.
Yes, the founder,
so
wasn't he?
unfortunately, he's not there in person, which would have been really good. But
Founded his
he's
first shop in Oswestry, didn't he?
Apparently
First
so,
ever
yeah.
shop.
I learnt that
Still
recently.
there.
So we've got a recording from him on how Iceland how they've built their sustainable business and what they're doing. So I think people are sort of really interested to hear about that as well.
It's great. So this is in conjunction with the Marches Growth Hub, as you said, Shropshire Wildlife Trust. So that's next Wednesday.
And Oswestry bid as well. They've been supporting it.
Never a quiet week. Do you get Christmas Day off then or not?
Yeah, we've got Christmas off. Yeah,
just Christmas Day.
Well, great to see you.
Thank you.
And I will see you at the sixth and final date. If anybody is interested in coming along, it's at Shrewsbury Town Football Club on Tuesday. All the details are on the Shropshire Chamber of Commerce website, aren't they? So no excuses whatsoever.
No excuses.
Thank you for joining us, both.
Thank you. Let's say a big thanks to our duo from ACO. Thank you very much.
Now, someone who couldn't be with us today was Justin Pearson, the stuntman.
Yeah, we were supposed to have Justin, the stuntman, coming here today, but he did ask us if we would issue this appeal on his behalf. Now, he's worked on some of the biggest movies in Hollywood: Star Wars, Bond, Harry Potter, Pirates of the Caribbean. He is trying to get some business interest to film a pilot show for a new stunt program next year, which sounds quite interesting, where I think they're going to try and recreate some of the old, most famous, iconic stunts of yesteryear using modern technology. He's trying to find out if there is a business anywhere in Shropshire which has a warehouse, a shed, a big area that might be available for him to set up his HQ in there for maybe 2 or 3 weeks at some point next year. If you're interested, if you think you can help, please do get in touch with us here, info@sbltv.co.uk, and we will put you in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, let's give a mention to AR Manley in Roddington, because they've got an apprentice, Robert Shaw. He's been shortlisted as a finalist for the 2022 British Woodworking Federation Awards in the Apprentice of the Year category, which is fantastic.
That's tomorrow night, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, of course it is, yeah. So congratulations to him. We'll find out and we'll share how the result went on Shropshire Business Live TV.
We will, and we will be back for our Christmas show, second week of December. If any of you out there have got a corporate company video, if you're dressing up, if you're doing anything wild, wacky, weird, fun, if you're recreating Elf the movie, whatever you're doing, send us a video. We'd love to include it on our Christmas show.
Absolutely, we'll share that. So info@sbltv.co.uk is the place to go. And of course, we've been updating SBL TV knowledge as well.
Blogs, videos, lots of expert advice there. And again, we want to hear from you. If you've got something you think you could help the Shropshire business community with in much the same way that the ACO team are out and about helping to spread their top tips, send it to us. It doesn't cost you a penny other than a bit of time.
Just get in touch.
Please do get in touch. It just remains for us really to say a big thank you to the team at Pressfeld School here today for hosting us. We are going to leave you with an adventure which Chris went on a couple of weeks ago.
I did, yeah.
If you're a tennis fan, you'll know very well that Advantage Shropshire was a business event which was held as part of this ATP tennis tournament in the county. And lots of business people came together for networking and an opportunity to see a bit of top level sport. We will see you second week of December. I'll leave you with Chris doing some tennis stuff.
So I'm here at the Shrewsbury Club. It's the W100 tennis tournament taking place this week. And I'm with Beth Heath. Now, Beth, you're from Shropshire Festivals, Director of Fun.
Yeah.
What's your involvement then this week?
So we've got a lot of corporate entertainment that happens every evening. We've had breakfast, we've had civic receptions, we've got networking, we've got parties. So we're in charge of just making sure those run smoothly, making the tent look amazing and adding smiles to people's faces.
Now you put on events all over Shropshire. Of course, we've got the Shrewsbury Food Festival. You've got Kids Fest taking place next year. Is that March time?
Yeah,
February half term. There you go in Telford. So you put on lots of events. We had Oktoberfest, which was brilliant, and that was rammed this year.
Yeah,
Oktoberfest.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. So when do you start then planning an event like this, which I guess is a bit smaller? But that doesn't mean to say it's any less, does it?
No, I have to say, people often say to me, what do you do the rest of the year? I'm like, actually, events take an awful long time to put together. So something like this, we've been talking about it for about 8 months.
Yeah.
So making sure that we've got a good lineup of speakers, events happening, like the amazing TV guys filming tonight. And then you've got lots of other things that happen alongside events that no one ever sees, and so we have to make sure there's enough infrastructure and all of the boring bits as well.
And I guess at the moment costs are rising, so how has that changed from when maybe, say, as you said 8 months ago you started doing this to today?
Yeah, it's been a nightmare year for events and costs going up, so we've seen costs rise about 20% over the last year. So something like Oktoberfest that was quoted for a year before that, we saw a massive increase in costs as we're going, and this is the same. You know, we're having to bring some stuff in late notice, and supply and demand's been very hard this year. And also availability of things like staff, really simple things, build marquees, need quite a lot of people to do that. And so you just can't get people who want to do that work anymore. A lot of people came out of the events industry during COVID. Why do you want to go back into it where you can earn more money stacking shelves in a supermarket?
So is that, would you say, one of the more difficult things at the moment is recruiting staff to come in and do an event like this and help?
Yeah, massively. Event staff is hard, less so in Shropshire than it is in the rest of the UK. As always, I think we're always a little bit softer than the rest of the country is. But yeah, recruitment's really tough, but getting equipment is tough too, because so many events have happened in 2022. Then there's just more demand for everything. So to get stuff, if you haven't been organised about it, is like hen's teeth.
Absolutely. So obviously we're here this week, we've got a great event going on. How important do you think things like this and the corporate side of events are important to the economy in Shropshire?
Well, Tuesday morning we had the Shropshire Leaders Breakfast, and I have never seen, there hasn't been a buzz like that from a networking event since pre-COVID, and that event hasn't happened since then. And the business that went on in the room, you know, we picked up 2 jobs from it, and that was my, you know, I was busy working.
And that's
really.
because it's nice and local as well, isn't it? Local jobs.
And the people were just absolutely networking. This evening we've got networking event happening, and the business is in the room, or you see somebody and you're meant to have a conversation with them, or you're picking up from something else. From a corporate perspective, you can't do all of your business over email. People love people, and you buy from people, and you want to do business with people. If you don't see those people, then business doesn't happen in the same way.
It's lovely to be back at events, as you say, from COVID and post-COVID. So February then, Kids Fest. How busy are you going to be leading up to that then?
So we've got hamper company, so we've got Shropshire Hamper Company, so we do about 4,000 hampers before Christmas.
4,000?
Yeah, it's going nuts at the moment. And people are more into local food and drink. So I know, ask me about Kids Fest and I'll sideline into hampers, but we're going mental at the moment, and the joy of that is we're supporting all of our local food and drink producers that come to the food festival. But yeah, for Kids Fest, we're building up for that now, and we're talking to a lot of sponsors, a lot of activity providers who are going to be doing, we've got some really cool ideas. We'll have things like foam parties and STEM workshops, coding, but we've also got forest school, and I've got some VR stuff that we're going to be doing this next year.
That sounds quite exciting.
Loads of interactive stuff for the kids. I still think we should open up an evening for all of the adults for the inflatables.
Definitely think you should do that.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant fun.
It would
but
be.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, good luck for the rest of the
Thank
week,
you.
and thank you for chatting to us. Well, I'm here now with Helen Johnson from Aaron & Partners. Helen, how's things going here? Because this is a corporate event tonight, isn't it? And you're part of that.
It is, yes. So we, in conjunction with WR Partners, have sponsored the Advantage Shropshire evening, which is all about bringing businesses together and celebrating the tennis event.
So it's all about tennis here, but about business as well for this evening.
It is.
And I think it's quite important, isn't it, to hold events like this?
Well, it is. It's great for publicising the event itself, which is, you know, a real positive for the region. But also it's an opportunity for businesses to get together, to spend time together, and to, you know, enjoy the tennis.
And I think for Aaron & Partners as well, this is quite important to be part of the business community, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, that's absolutely fundamental to a law firm like ours, is working with people, building relationships, and sponsoring events like this enables some of that.
And do you sponsor many events? How do you get out into the business community?
We work a lot with the Chambers of Commerce, with business organisations, and with other professional services firms. And yes, we're quite selective about the businesses, about the events that we do sponsor.
And working with businesses across Shropshire, I guess, and the wider area as well, and obviously they come to you for help, and for not just for bad things, is it? It's for good things as well, mergers and things like that.
Of course, absolutely. Our corporate and commercial team are you know, fully occupied, looking at businesses grow and develop, and we have a strong international offering as well. So many businesses in Shropshire are looking overseas. In fact, we sponsored the International Business Award at the Chamber of Commerce Business Awards this year.
So things like that's really important as a law firm for you to get out and about into the business community.
Absolutely.
So I better let you go back and do some networking.
Thank you very much.
I'll speak to you soon.
Cheers. Thanks.
Thank you, Helen. Well, I've just caught up with Dave Courtine, the Managing Director of the Shrewsbury Club. Dave, it's been a busy week for you. You're nearly at the end of it. How's things been going?
Yeah, it's been a great week. We're really pleased with how the event's gone. I think we've held a number of ITF World Tour events here at the Shrewsbury Club before, but never one at this level. And I think the jump up from the previously biggest event we'd held was a W60. This one is a W100, and I think the step up for us has been huge and has been challenging, but the benefits far outweigh the challenges that it's brought with it. It's been a really exciting week.
So it's been a great week for tennis, but also for local business as well, because this event, obviously you've got the tennis side, but it's been big for Shropshire business.
Yeah, I think it's great in a number of perspectives. I think firstly, research by Deloitte and Sport England would say an event like this brings in around £450,000 worth of business to the local area, whether that be through hospitality, tourism, or other sort of spin-off businesses that would benefit from bringing it here, and just the promotion that it gives to like the town and the county really. So I think that's a real win. And I think secondly, it's only because we've had support from over 34 local companies through sponsorship and supporting these events that actually means that it can go ahead, and we really hope that they feel they've got value for money in terms of the awareness that we've brought them, and also the value that it's brought to their clients in terms of hospitality and being able to entertain people. So yeah, I think it's great for the businesses in general because of how we bring awareness to the region, and I think it's great for the companies that have got behind us and sponsored us.
And I guess business wouldn't get involved, they wouldn't sponsor if they didn't think there was a return value for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think to see the level of tennis that we've got here, I mean, right now as we're talking, kind of in the background over there is playing Tatiana Maria, who played in the Wimbledon semi-final this year. You know, it's players that are playing at the top level of Grand Slams that are now playing in Shrewsbury. So that's That's wonderful, and I think therefore as a business to be associated with this type of event and to be able to bring clients to it and have your branding and your awareness around courtside is great. You know, we've got this event's being live streamed around the world, and we've got the banners around the court that have got the sponsors' names on it. So I think hopefully we've really helped in terms of brand awareness, and we've helped them in terms of hospitality and entertaining of key clients and staff.
Well, tonight is the Advantage Shropshire evening, so there's lots of businesses all coming together here, so I guess that's quite important, and for you to have the space to offer that for businesses to come together.
Yeah, this event was put on as a partnership with Shropshire Festivals, as in the whole week really, so they work with us really hard on what goes on in the non-tennis side. We have a number of social events and activities. Advantage Shropshire, as you say, is all about the business networking benefits, and Shropshire Festivals do a great job at dressing up the market. It looks amazing. We've got live music, we've got street food, so it's a really great night for people to just get together and be able to chat about business, but also enjoy some sport as well.
Absolutely. Dave, you're a busy man. I better let you go and carry on.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Well, I've now caught up with Heather Rees from WR Partners. Heather, thank you for joining us. Now, this is a great event. This evening's Advantage Shropshire. It's all about Shropshire business. Why did you get involved in this evening?
We got involved for, many reasons. It's a brilliant event in the area. There's some really fantastic tennis players that have come. We've had some really exciting games today. So for that reason, we're involved. Secondly, we've got many clients around the area, especially Shropshire. It's a really good opportunity for us to celebrate some of the great stuff that happens in the area and to
come together, I suppose. I mean, there's lots of businesses. We're on the mezzanine level. There's a match going on now just there. But downstairs, we've got a fantastic marquee, which I know has been put together with Shropshire Festivals. And as you say, there's lots of businesses across Shropshire all coming together.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So, we provided a competition to our clients to take part in the event, and we've never had such a high amount of engagement. It was really brilliant to see how many people want to support the local area and come to an event like this and take part.
I know everybody needs an accountant, everybody needs help with their tax, so people know of you, but I guess it's important as well to come out and to advertise and to spread the word about the company too at events like this.
Yeah, we rebranded around the COVID period. We've made a number of acquisitions and kind of redefined who we are as a company. That's not to say that we've changed massively from where we were originally, but we always like to take the opportunity to really share all of the expertise that we can with as many people as possible and to essentially help as many businesses as possible. So yeah, you're right, branding is very important.
It sounds good. Listen, I'm going to let you go back down to the action downstairs because I know there's a lot going on. You've got a lot of people to talk to as well.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, it's a really successful night tonight, so I think
it should be quite good. Thank you. I'm joined now by Rachel Labour from the Marches LEP. Rachel, thank you for joining us up here in our little studio this evening. So we've got a big event taking place tonight, Advantage Shropshire, lots of businesses getting together. One of the things I've been hearing from talking to people all throughout the evening is how important it is for businesses to be back in the same room networking.
I think it is vitally important. I think so much can be gained from actually just those one-off conversations you might have, and it's a connection that you wouldn't make if you just sat in your own office or in front of your own computer screen. And it's those conversations that might just open up opportunities to businesses. And it's the opportunity to share knowledge as well. We're here and we've bought quite a lot of tickets for other people to come here today because we really want to encourage that engagement with businesses. And we really just want to promote all the money and support that is still available to businesses. We've heard with the interest rates today going up, I think more and more pressure is being put on businesses' bottom line as well. So to know that there is help and support available through the Growth Hub, I think is really important.
What have you been hearing then from local businesses? How concerned are they? What are the concerns?
The concerns remain around interest rates, but the cost of energy, it's just crippling so many businesses, isn't it? We've still got the problems with recruitment as well, but then with inflation running at such a high rate, I think the demands from people are ever higher and the salary expectations are ever higher, but businesses just can't meet those high costs when their energy bills are going up. Some modestly, you would say 10%, but some businesses have had their energy costs go up by 50, 60, 70%. You just can't meet that, can you?
No.
I mean, I've actually took my children swimming before I came here tonight, and they've both got out of the swimming pool and they're absolutely frozen because they've had to turn the temperature of the swimming pool
what
down.
We're hearing
Not
about now,
here.
isn't it? No, but elsewhere.
Yeah.
And also one of the things we're hearing about at the moment is restaurants or pubs as well, eateries, having to close slightly earlier just to save money.
Yeah, and just only open 4 days a week. And I was speaking to a business that they've decided to make the lighting more moody, otherwise known as turning the lights off.
There's lots of things businesses are doing.
But even like hairdressers, you wouldn't have even thought, it didn't occur to me that hairdressers would be struggling as much, but speaking to a hairdresser recently as well, and they're going to look at reducing their days to maybe to 4 or 5 days a week because they just literally can't afford to keep the lights on unless they've got every single slot booked. So I think people need to understand it's really tough times. The Governor of the Bank of England said, I think we're going into the longest recession for ever, actually, isn't it? And it's going to over the next 2 years. So I think we need to make the most of all the support that is available there. And I think it's that sharing of knowledge with other businesses. So
Absolutely.
It's important to network.
And one of the things we did along with the Marches LEP, with the Growth Hub, was launch Sbltv Knowledge, which is a great portal that people can go and find out more information. We're adding information to that all the time. So Marches Growth Hub then is a great resource.
Yeah, we've got loads of information on there for free, and we've got grant funding still that's available. We've got small equipment grants. We've got the Marches Energy Fund still. So yeah, if you need any support, just come to us and then we'll direct you, because there's a plethora of business support out there. There's over 17 different initiatives running, but we've got loan funds, we've got grant funds. Just come to us. It's not as much as it was with European money falling away now, but hopefully government will continue to invest in different initiatives. And there's quite a lot of quite niche funds, which maybe a small business wouldn't find, but come to us and we'll direct you. Make the most of it. As I say to people, and I was speaking to a business today and talking him through some of the options. He said, well, I don't want to be seen to be applying for everything. I said, well, why wouldn't you? If it's free money and it can help your business, then apply.
Take that help, absolutely. Rachel, I'll let you go and carry on enjoying your evening. Thank you so much for chatting to us.
Lovely, thank you.
Well, I'm joined now by James Martin, Managing Director of the Budgeon Group. James, this is a big event. It's got bigger. You've been involved for quite a few years now, haven't you?
I have, yes. Been involved for about 7 years. We took over from another car company, I think, about 7 years ago, when it was really small. David just taking it over. There was probably 10 people came to visit it, and he's grown it ever since. So up to the size of this year, which is $100,000.
I think it is $100,000, yeah, which is quite important and quite a big tournament to have here in Shropshire.
It is, yeah, for the town. Other than the sort of the food festival that happens in the summer, it's one of the biggest events. I think the biggest sporting event outside Shrewsbury Town football, which is obviously big in the town. But other than that, tennis, yeah, it's fantastic.
And how then important is it for you to be involved in this as Budgeon Motors?
As Budgeon, we love sport. I love sport. I love rugby. I love tennis. I love Formula One. So I try and pick sports around the area that I can get involved with. We actually got involved with the children to start with. So probably 5 or 6 years ago, the club started to look at local schools, and Dave came to me and said, "Do you want to sponsor the local schools program?" And then it sort of built from there into then these tournaments. And but from a town point of view, it's great to look at the town.
And tonight is Advantage Shropshire. It's all about local business. So I guess for you as well, networking with local businesses?
Yes. I've funnily enough, I've just been talking to someone about my will, because I don't have a will. So I've got their card, and I'm going to go and see those next week. But,
those little moments, isn't it, where you're just probably in a conversation, and they might go, if I don't know you, what do you do? And they'll say this, and that's business.
It is, absolutely. And then there's Savills, which is another one of the sponsors, which we've been talking to about property, because we're looking for property in a particular town, and they hopefully will find me one. So yeah, it is all about the businesses, and to be fair, the support of this club from the local businesses is phenomenal. It's really good.
And in terms of Budgeon at the moment, how are things going for you? Because we've heard obviously during COVID there was delays in getting new cars.
There's still delays in getting cars.
Still now?
Yeah. So there's been a war in Ukraine, there's been a shortage in chips, there's been a plethora of different issues in the economy, and so getting cars is still difficult. We can get them, we can still get cars, so everyone come and visit Budgeon Motors for cars, but it's still tough. The world's tough, and just running a business is tough.
Yeah, so is there anything you've done then to change, either since COVID or now we're talking about the price of energy and things like that? Has that made you rethink things?
Yeah, we're a lot more conscious of cost. So we were always, I'm an accountant, so we've always been conscious of cost, but actually, you know, things like people leaving the door open with the heating on, and we're using local companies for that, to be honest. You ring companies up and say, we need to work out how do we turn the heating off when someone opens a door, or you know, silly little things like that. And I don't think there's anyone here today with that, but yeah. So and generally from property, you know, looking after your property, you know, in this time is difficult. Yeah, very, very difficult.
Absolutely. Well, listen, thank you for chatting to us.
No problem.
And also, thank you for sponsoring this great event, which is brilliant for Shropshire and Shropshire business. Yeah,
well, I'm glad Dave keeps asking me back every year, so obviously we're doing something right. And yeah, thank you for talking to me.
I'll let you get back and do some networking.
Perfect.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Well, I've been joined now by Richard Joyner, the tournament director. Richard, how is the event going?
We're having a fantastic week here. This is the culmination of a number of years' work from Dave Courtine, the club, and everyone in Shropshire in terms of getting to a prize money level of $100,000, and we've certainly not been disappointed so far.
Because I mean, events here at the Shrewsbury Club, when the first tournament started, they started quite small, they've built up, but this is the biggest since, is it 1994?
Yeah, how it's worked, I mean, in terms of the club, every year there's improvements that go on with the event. But in terms of in Great Britain, this is actually the highest level indoor professional women's tennis event that's been staged since the early 1990s on the south coast in Brighton. So it's sort of, that's quite a long while ago, the early 1990s obviously. And so it's something that the town and everyone associated with the event should be really proud of.
And for you as a tournament director, how much pressure is on you as you're planning and building up to something like this week?
Yeah, there is. Okay, and there's also a little bit of an unknown because it's the first time at this level, okay, at this venue. But because of everything that the local community do, everything that Dave Courtine and the club does, okay, it means it spreads the load rather than just being on one person. There's a whole number of people that sort of help get it to where it is for the tournament week.
And I guess in a big event like this really could be held anywhere in the UK. You've got people flying in to perform, but to be here in Shropshire, what makes these facilities a perfect location?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. One, it's obviously a fantastic club. Okay, it's got some good quality courts. Okay, 4 or 5 years ago, Dave said, what does the club need to do tennis-wise to get a higher level event? And two of the things that were required were to increase the lighting level and improve the lighting levels for this level of event, and to resurface the courts accordingly. So I think a few months later, they've came back and said, yeah, we've got all that sorted, we're going to do it, and therefore that meant that it was prepared and ready for opportunities that came along in the calendar.
And would you normally have a response that quick then when
No.
you say no? So this just goes to show.
I'm in a nutshell. I mean, usually at that point there'd be, okay, perhaps we'll stay where we are then. But no, because there was such a drive and a desire to get a higher level events, the investment opportunity came along, and that's what the club has had for the last few years as well. Which obviously not just for the professional matches, okay, obviously helps members of the club, and it's a nicer, brighter experience for them too.
And you've got lots of people across the week coming to view the tennis, which then obviously makes the sport even bigger because then they kind of want to take it up maybe, or younger children.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's such a big area here in terms of engagement and in terms of inspiring. Okay, and it doesn't matter what that inspiration is. It doesn't matter whether it's inspiration just to get involved in the sport, even maybe not even playing, but get involved in the sport in other ways. But hopefully to get involved in the sport to play and actually enjoy it, whatever level that may be. So that sort of that growth, that participation, that sustainability is a great asset. So it's not just about the matches that are out there, although they're important. It's how that can generate interest in the sport and hopefully sort of enhance people's lives, I guess.
And also tonight is a business evening. It's Advantage Shropshire, so lots of businesses getting involved as well and showing their support for the sport.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I know Dave's. I mean, I've not got the exact number, but I know there's been a lot of businesses that have been getting behind the event, not just in terms of sponsorship, but in other ways of supporting the event. And again, at the network session happening tonight, there's opportunities there, but it's the tournament that's the sort of the magnet that's bringing that together.
So we're building up to the final, which takes place on Sunday, and obviously the big final is the big one. What happens after that? What will you be doing after that?
After that, personally, will be, I mean, on Sunday, immediate thoughts are on Sunday evening. We've got a lot of de-rigging to do, which we need to have done by Sunday evening, so the club is back to back to normal for Monday morning. And also I've got a mission. In fact, I have a 9-seater vehicle here, which I have to get back to where I live in Nottingham by first thing on Monday morning. So I can't sort of think, oh, I'll come back in the morning and finish that, because I've got to drop it off back there. So it's, I mean, that's the initial bit, is the physical de-rig, and then there's obviously quite a lot of wrapping up from the tournament, whether it's the finances, whether it's the, well, there's quite a lot of wrapping up to do from there.
Planning for other tournaments in the future?
Yes, okay. I mean, and then there's the discussion with the club in terms of how they'd like to progress for next year, and we as an organisation would always have the Shrewsbury Club as a go-to venue, because of the fact of everything that the club does and the local community do.
Well, it's been lovely chatting to you, Richard, and thank you for bringing the tournament here to Shropshire as well.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.